Hello, everybody. My name is Patrick Dean, and I'm an admissions counselor here at Worcester Polytechnic Institute. Thank you so much for joining us today to learn a little bit more about biology and biotechnology. This is done through the webinar format, so if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to drop any questions in the question and answer. And if you're watching this on a recording on YouTube, please feel free to reach out to the admissions department at any time, and we will make sure to give our contact information at the end. With that being said, I'd love to pass it over to Professor Duffy to start the presentation.
Thank you, Patrick. So Katie, nice to meet you. I go by Professor Duffy. My name is Duff. Joining me is Sarah Doherty, who's an undergraduate in the department. I'm a professor. I've been a professor at WPI since 2006 and was department head for the previous 10 years. This year I transitioned, and Professor Rao, who is now our current department head, is also on the session, but it won't be presenting today. So I'm going to share my screen. If you have any questions, feel free to chat. We'll leave some time at the end, again, for you to ask questions after my presentation and Sarah's. So I'm going to hop on and share my screen. Okay. So one of the things I like to do right off the bat is brag a little bit about the department. And our department is the only department at WPI where the motto of WPI, which is Lehre and Kunst, which stands for theory and practice. WPI believes strongly in understanding and combining theory with practice, so implementing those concepts and things that you learn and putting those into practice. And we have a very project-based education. From the perspective of the department, that fits incredibly well with the name of the department, which is biology. So we think about the concepts tying to the science of life in biology, and then how we begin to apply that, right? So how do we think about using those concepts and actually begin to decode the various aspects of life and begin to apply that in terms of solving problems. So one of the things I like to do is talk about the fact that biology is all around us, and the application of biology to problems in life we see every day. And obviously, most recently, we see that with COVID and the development of vaccines and various therapeutics that have been generated with respect to that. But we also think about things like yogurt and the development of technology like CRISPR. And so as we begin to think about things like that, we can also look at things that we use every day, like detergents. Detergents contain enzymes. Enzymes are proteins made by cells. And so if we want to think about how to clean our clothes, we actually use enzymes that break down lipids and fats and other types of proteins, as well as proteases that are present in those detergents. So in fact, washing your clothes and doing your laundry is biology and the application of that via technology. Snowmaking, if you've ever gone skiing or snowboarding or snowshoeing or cross-country skiing, you've probably been on artificial snow. Artificial snow is made from proteins, again, that are on bacteria that are present on plants, and at temperatures a little above freezing, these proteins can trigger crystallization. And so you get frost on plants, which obviously is damaging to crops. But because these proteins trigger crystallization at temperatures above freezing, they can be used in snowmaking, so that even though the temperature may be warm, you can begin to think about actually generating snow because you trigger crystallization. And so you can make snow at temperatures, again, above freezing, beneficial for ski resorts. This is one of my favorites from an old movie, Christmas with the Cranks. And Botox is actually a neurotoxin. It's a paralytic. And again, one of the hugest medicines that we use in terms of dermatology. And so we again think about making that protein that prevents nerve transmission and using that in this particular case in dermatology. Off is actually something that is not biotechnology. So we can think about things that involve molecules that are made by cells, proteins, RNAs, lipids, fats, things like that. But in fact, there are other things like off that are chemically based. And so we can begin to think about what we use our concepts in biology for and how to apply those. And that contrasts with things like chemistry, where you're doing synthetic or organic in terms of the types of molecules that you're being, that are generated. Lactate, we think about an enzyme called lactase, which we all produce during infancy when we're weaning. And then as we begin to wean off of that mother's milk, that enzyme begins to turn off in the vast majority of people, about 65% of people worldwide. In about 30 to 35% of people, we have mutations that allow that enzyme to continue to persist its production in our small intestine. And so we can continue to break down milk, in particular the lactose that's present in the milk. So those people who don't have that mutation are lactose intolerant. Those of us who may have that mutation are able to break down lactose, and we're called lactase persistent. You can actually produce that enzyme, sell it as a pill. It's called Lactaid. And you can take that to then provide that ability to break down lactose, whether it be milk, ice cream, pizza, the cheese that you eat, et cetera. Again, so we think about the biology and how we might apply that to solving a problem. Cheese is actually made through enzymes that produce curds and whey. And again, we use now an enzyme called chymosin that's produced genetically through genetic engineering rather than extracted from originally what was the gut of cows. So biology is all around us. The last example I like to show is a coat. Both North Face and Patagonia are now making materials out of spider silk. And this is not actually produced by the spiders, but the gene that produces spider silk is called fibrin, and companies have begun to be able to develop threads and materials using that protein produced again through things like yeast, and then use that to spin threads of various strengths, and then use that for the development of fabrics. And so this is, again, lots of different examples of how we apply the concepts of biology, how we go from DNA, RNA to protein with respect to our everyday lives. Okay, so we as biologists at WPI, we like to think about solving problems and integrating lots of different approaches to thinking about how to solve those problems. And obviously across the world, we have lots of different problems that we face, be it the health, environment, energy, or food. The National Academy of Sciences is a national group of scientists who think about, again, science and how we begin to use that to address these global problems. And recently they've coined a term called the new biology, which really is the integration of a lot of different disciplines. And in this case, let me go to a laser pointer here, which will help a little bit. In this case, they're talking about integrating fields across chemistry, computer sciences, and mathematics, as well as engineering and physics with biology. And it's really the integration of all of these, with biology, again, being at the foundation of this new biology, and how we can begin to use that cross-disciplinary knowledge to understand biological systems in a much deeper way and understand the principles by which they organize and operate. And so we can begin to think about predicting, analyzing, and modulating those pathways in various ways to begin to solve these problems in the world, whether it, again, be health, environment, energy, or food. And again, this group of scientists at the National Academy really think a lot of the solutions to the problems we face globally are going to be tied to biology. Why do I show this? Well, because our curriculum really represents this cross-disciplinary approach quite well. As a biology and biotechnology major, you will be expected to have clearly a foundation in biology. The 10 here stand for the number of courses in biology that you'd have to take. The 8 for labs. We have labs that run separately from our lecture-based courses. And so you have to take both the lecture-based courses as well as, again, our lab-based courses, where you're going to learn that experimental approach and those techniques and concepts tied to the practical aspect. At the same time, we expect you to have knowledge in both chemistry as well as in quantitative sciences. And so you have to take 5 chemistry courses. Those could be intro chem, organic, or they could be biochemistry courses. We don't specify exactly what you have to take, but allow you flexibility. But we do require, again, that foundation in chemistry to supplement that biology. In addition, we expect 5 other courses in quantitative sciences, and those can be in engineering, and physics, or computer sciences and math. And so we're expecting you to be trained across the sciences broadly and be able to speak those languages and integrate those. Within the bio major, you can focus in particular areas. So you could focus, for example, in biomedical sciences and human physiology, if you might be a pre-health science, and Sarah can talk a little bit later with respect to that. Some of the courses that our pre-health students or students who are focusing in this area might take are human biology, anatomy and physiology, cancer biology, developmental biology, and global health. So again, these are some of the courses if you wanted to focus in this particular area, what we call a track. We have other tracks, including genetic and cellular engineering. So if you're someone who's more interested in genetics and kind of that molecular aspect of biology, there are a number of different courses and you can pick that track. We have lab-based courses. Sarah will tell a little bit about one of those lab-based courses, but one that we also offer is cell culture models for tissue regeneration, things like synthetic biology, biotechnology, and obviously genetics and molecular biology. If you're interested in kind of the larger perspective of biology, obviously we think about things like ecology, the environment, evolution. And so we also have a track for that. And students can take courses like biodiversity, ecology, animal behavior, as well as things tied to our Great Problem seminar for first-year students called, and one of them is called Extinction, Who Will Survive, by one of our faculty members, Maria Backersman. Another track is infectious disease. So maybe you're someone who's interested in, again, pathogenesis or infection. And so again, we have courses like medical microbiology, microimmunology, immunotherapies is a cell culture-based lab course that we teach. And then some capstone courses, which I'll come back to again in a slide or two. And in this case, that capstone was disease detective or epidemiology. So again, kind of a broad range of areas in terms of our tracks. Neuroscience represents another one. If you have an interest in kind of neuroscience and behavior, you can think about focusing in courses like neurobiology, nerve and muscle physiology, brain and behavior, and again, the neurobiology of learning and memory. These are tracks that you can take. You don't have to take a track. You could, again, just fulfill the requirements of the major, which all of these would do. This just allows you to specify within those requirements particular areas that may be of interest to you. Students can also create their own disciplinary tracks as well. So again, a lot of flexibility here in terms of what you want to do within the overall major requirements. Minors, students can minor in lots of different things across the campus. I put 2 here in particular because the department played a critical role in the formation of these minors, and a lot of our majors do minor in these areas. So bioinformatics and computational biology, obviously computers with the genome sequencing coming out and our sequencing technology being so powerful these days. Understanding that information, that sequence information becomes critical. And we, with the math and computer science departments, developed a major and a minor in bioinformatics and computational biology. So the 3 departments support that program, both at the major and the minor level, as well as at the graduate level where we have master's and PhD programs in BCB as well. In addition, we have a minor in global health that the department supports, and a number of our pre-health students will often minor in global health as well. Within our curriculum, I mentioned we have both lecture and lab-based courses. Our lab-based courses, we have shifted tremendously away from what we call kind of the cookbook labs, where the same experiments are done from year to year. And what we've done is move towards more of a discovery-based approach, or what we call an authentic-based approach, which means rather than do experiments that have been done from year to year, or you have an outline and the outcome known, we want you to learn what real science is like. How do you solve problems? Well, solving problems requires both theory and practice and trial and error. You do an experiment, it doesn't work. You have to figure out how to then redo that experiment and what variable to change to become successful to answer that question that you're asking. And so we've been part of a number of national initiatives as well as developed some of our own. So the first initiative we became involved in was started out of Yale, and it's called Small World Initiative. And it was really a crowdsourcing initiative where students literally go out into the field, collect soil, and then determine what microbes are in that soil and whether or not they produce any new antibiotics. So could we discover new bacterial species and possibly new antibiotics through this course? And so you're provided with an outline of the types of things you might do, but for every student, every group, you work in teams. In the lab, you're going to have a different soil sample. You will end up with different bacteria. And so you will have to follow different approaches to determining what those bacteria are and whether or not they might produce some type of antibiotic. So true discovery, and obviously the outcome of that, and all the different universities and students that are involved in that could lead to, again, real experimental results. And we expect, and again, part of these approaches is that that data gets disseminated nationally and also the source of publications. Two ones that we've developed internally at WPI are molecular and genetic engineering. And I think Sarah can talk a little bit about that. So I'll let her touch on that. And then the one I mentioned earlier in terms of cell culture models of tissue regeneration is one that, again, mimics research our faculty at WPI are doing. And that's true also in molecular and genetic engineering, where the focus is on understanding the mechanisms involved in TB infection. So the goal here is really for you to get experiential learning. What is it like to do an experiment, have it not work, and how do you then troubleshoot to come up with a solution to that? And then what do you learn in terms of new material, new information to provide to the larger body of knowledge? And again, obviously, along with troubleshooting and problem solving, you generate your technical and analytical skills. You learn how to solve problems, again, in a real way. In all of these courses, you're often working as part of a project team. And because you're part of a team, you're developing those skills and communicating with your partners, but we also expect that you're going to develop those skills in terms of communicating them to others as well. And so often there are either presentations or posters that the groups will do at the end of the term that are going to summarize all of the work that they've done over the term of that course. So that's a little bit about our labs. I talked a little bit about the various types of courses. One of the things that we face as biologists, and you can see this again in society, the rapidity with which new things are discovered and generated in the life sciences, particularly in biology, is pretty much on a daily basis. And so that pace of science in biology and life sciences is incredibly rapid. And so how do we ensure that our students are coming out being aware of kind of what they've learned and how that might impact new discoveries that are happening, again, on a daily or weekly or monthly basis? So we decided about 2-3 years ago now to require all bio majors to take what we call a capstone course, which is going to integrate concepts across a range of scientific areas. And I'll go through a couple of those types of courses, but we change these courses yearly because science is moving fast. We want to identify areas that are new and novel and changing, and then again, get you to think about what is going on in that particular area, in that particular field. That means reading primary literature, reading published papers that have just come out, and beginning to understand how to think about those concepts, applying them to those problems. And so we generate new courses every year, 4 new courses. We teach a new course every term. So 1 course per term in different topic areas. And one example that we've taught is cancer vaccines. And obviously to teach this and to take it, you have to have a strong foundation in cell biology, cancer biology, and immunology. So the idea is you have taken those courses as a sophomore, junior, senior year. You then think about how do we integrate all of the information that we've learned in those courses and apply them to something like cancer vaccines that's on the front lines of cancer therapeutics. We think about things like CRISPR and the notion that there was a Chinese scientist 2 years ago, 3 years ago now, that was using CRISPR technology to begin to think about engineering, again, the human genome, and what are the ethics involved in that? What is the science and the technology involved in that? And what do we think about legislating appropriately those types of things. So we have a course this year termed Genetics and Society. How do we, again, think about those technologies and begin to really understand how we apply them, what the science is behind them, and then the ethics as well. So taking courses like genetics and molecular biology as a sophomore and junior, you begin to think about how do we apply what we've learned in society, and again, addressing issues that we face in that area. Brain and behavior is another one that we've have taught and will be teaching again. Anatomy and physiology, neurobiology, and animal behavior are those kind of initial courses that set the foundation for taking something in this particular area. So again, we rotate these every year. You can take more if you'd like, but we require every senior to take one so that they, again, begin to understand how to read primary literature, journal articles that are published, how to present those, how to dissect those, and analyze really what's going on. Okay, so WPI, as you may be aware, is very project-oriented. There are 3 foundational projects that you have to complete regardless of major. The Humanities and Arts Sufficiency or project is the first one. I won't spend much time talking about that, so I may touch a little bit upon that. But the other project that you are required to do, and the HUA is usually your first and second year. It's a series of courses and culminates in a kind of a capstone type course in Humanities and Arts. The IQP is a project that is interdisciplinary. It is not required to be in your discipline. Typically, it's out of your discipline and involves a group of students that are, again, from different majors. About 65% of our students do this abroad at one of our, I think now we have close to 55 or more project centers across the world that students do this in. And really the goal here is to relate science or technology to society. And so you're using your skills to address some question or issue that a local community may face or be involved in. And how do you bring your skills to bear in terms of solving that and, again, addressing that societal context. And so this is just one example of a team, 2 engineers, a biochemistry major and a biology major, who work together in Venice. And they actually worked with National Geographic and IBM to begin to understand the genetic origins of native Venetians. And so they went around Venice talking to people to explain to them what this project that National Geographic and IBM were involved in, and collecting DNA samples from those people and then getting them to participate in this larger project. Again, that was part of something that National Geographic and IBM were doing. Your MQP, so that's typically junior year, requires a term, 7 weeks, and you do that full time, those IQPs. Senior year, you come back and you're on campus again, obviously, focused on classes and your major qualifying project. And this is done within your major. Typically in biology, we're required throughout the entire year. So most of our seniors are doing this and involved in their MQP throughout the 4 terms, A, B, C, and D. You have a faculty mentor who advises you. This is real research. You're working in a research lab. We partner with UMass Med. We've partnered with institutions in Boston. We've partnered with Tufts Vet School. We partner with companies as well, Roche, Genzyme, Genentech, to do all types of corporate MQPs as well. And the focus here is really, again, beginning to use your skills to learn about how to apply your skills to a real world problem and research in a particular lab. These are just some videos. Let's see if I can get this to work here. I'm going to jump out and go back to my arrow and see if I can get this to work. So these are just 2 videos here that students in the past have been involved in. And in the left, you can see DNA chromosomes that have been tagged with a molecule called GFP, so we can watch cell division. And so the question is, how do chromosomes segregate properly? That's a major problem in cancer. And so you can begin to see how we can use our skills and knowledge to address something as simple as chromosome segregation and genome instability and how that relates to cancer. My other video here, hopefully we can get this going. This is a C. elegans, a nematode. And what you'll notice here, this is a neuron, single neuron, and it's going to light up here in response to an odor. So again, we get back to behavior and brain. How do our bodies and brains respond to particular cues, be they in the environment, such as an odor or other types of cues? And these are videos that, again, were done by students. And so we can begin to think about how a single neuron might respond to a particular cue and become activated. So that MQP, the goal is really to apply your skills and learn how to do research at that level. We also have summer fellowships. The LaPrey and Summer Research Fellowships are within biology and provide support for some of our students. It's competitive, and so students apply in the spring, and then the awards are made, and we typically support about 4 to 5 students over the summer to do that research. Senior year, you then follow on, continuing on with your MQP, but this is strictly for full-time research over the summer. Our teaching and research labs are in Goddard Hall on the main part of campus. Our research labs for the faculty are in the Life Science and Bioengineering Center, which is shown here. This is a typical biology lab with our faculty member, Scarlett Shell, who studies tuberculosis and gene regulation prokaryotic systems. This is kind of a nice figure of a picture of a typical lab in the department. So you've got a number of undergraduate students here. You've got some graduate students as well, and then a postdoctoral fellow, and then our faculty member. One thing that you'll notice is most of the labs have a very similar layout here, which is these kind of bays, what we call bays. And all of the bays are connected. There are no doors blocking one lab from another. All the labs are contiguous, and the bays are all open. And so labs, whether they be in biology, biomedical engineering, chemistry, biochemistry, are all open. And so there's a lot of flow between the labs in terms of communication. Almost done here. And then we'll shift it over to Sarah to introduce herself and tell you a little about her experience. Our students do lots of different things. They go on to industry, about 50 to 65%, depending upon the year. Can be 50, can be 65, varies again from year to year. This is just a graph exemplifying 65% going on this particular year to industry or private sector, and then about 30% to graduate medical schools, et cetera. Moderna, I showed here, one of our alums is actually the head of manufacturing of cancer vaccines and other vaccines, including COVID, at Moderna. And so we have, again, a lot of our alumni are placed quite quickly within the biotech industry, and obviously often go on to either graduate medical or vet schools, and a whole list of those, as well as others, are up here. Biotech companies, Massachusetts is one of the best places to be in the world. These are all companies that our students have gone on to work for, or are currently working for. 8 of the top 10 pharma companies are in Massachusetts. About 30% growth in terms of the economy in life sciences and biotech over the last 10 years. Massachusetts ranks second in the US with respect to the amount of money spent on research and development in the biotech industry, and about $3.6 billion was spent in 2019, 2020 in terms of venture capital and funding these biotech companies. The other point I always like to make is, and now the numbers even increased more recently, if you think about the COVID vaccine, the majority of the top drugs we use worldwide are biologics. This means molecules that cells make. And so if we understand, again, how cells operate, we begin to think about how we can utilize that from a broader perspective. Obviously, students can go on to do lots of other things, be it law school, people going to the venture capital area, people going to communications. Obviously, certainly in terms of COVID, you think about the news, newspapers, all kinds of media that has to, again, parse down the science and what it means from a society perspective. And so communication becomes a big part of that, be it artistic or, again, in terms of media. Students do lots of different things with the degree. Lots of different opportunities to do different things on campus. And what I think I'll do now is just stop sharing and shift over to Sarah. And Sarah is a senior currently, biology and biotech major, and I'll let you tell you a little bit more about herself. I think her screen is her video is having a little bit of problems, so we might just hear her audio. So Sarah, if you want to jump in now, you're all set.
Okay, thanks, Steph. Yeah, I'm sorry, my camera is not working. But yes, I'm a senior biology and biotechnology major. I'm also a double major in professional writing. So that I've been doing like 2 MQPs. Duff is my biology MQP advisor. We're looking at the interactions between an EGFR molecule that's overexpressed in a lot of cancer cells and a novel inhibitor found in Drosophila. So that is my bio MQP. On the professional writing side, I'm also pre-med, so I was able to kind of adapt my professional writing MQP to fit something that I was really interested in. So I'm looking at the role of reflective writing in the medical professions and how that can be adapted for pre-health students. So it's been really flexible, like how I can weave in biology with professional writing. And there are a lot of writing courses about medicine and biology. We have writing about disease and public health, research methods in writing. So there's a lot of different ways to integrate humanities into biology as well. So yeah, like I said, I'm a pre-health student. So I've been following that track, and it's really easy at WPI to fit in all of the courses you need to be on the pre-health track. It kind of just flows with the biology curriculum. And I've just finished applying to med schools. So that was a big thing recently. I spent the summer as a LaPrey fellow working in Duff's lab. So I was able to continue the research I did over the summer throughout the school year.
So Sarah, I was going to just jump in for a second. If you could tell them some of the other things that you do outside of academics. And I know certainly you work for me for one of my courses, but you also do some other things tied to activities outside of academics. So if you want to touch on some of that, and then your IQP, obviously with COVID, things were, in terms of travel, the world had changed a little bit for our students who are seniors and juniors, but if you want to talk a little bit about your IQP and even your humanities and arts sufficiency, and then maybe some of the other things that you do, like what you just finished doing and we're on a bus to head back to prep for this.
So I guess I'll start with my IQP. So I was originally supposed to be going to Copenhagen last term. Unfortunately, with COVID, that was canceled. But we were able to shift our IQPs to Worcester base. So we're still working in a team. We spent the whole term working on a project looking at the perception of marine plastic cleanup methods in the public at WPI and in the community. So not related to biology, but it was really useful going through the process of writing a report, seeing what goes into like surveying the public and coming up with good, reliable data. So that was a really good experience. And then on campus, I'm also a tutor. I tutor genetics and other biology courses along with organic chemistry. And there are a lot of opportunities to be PLAs, peer learning assistants for other classes. So that's a good opportunity if you like teaching and working with other students. I'm on the cross country and track and field team, so I actually just got back from practice about 2 minutes before this call started. So yeah.
Unmute myself. And you're also a member of the campus EMT team?
Yes. WPI has a volunteer EMS squad that works around campus and in Worcester. So they're always looking for people to help out. It's really good for experience, direct patient contact, anything if you're looking to go into any kind of healthcare.
Awesome, thanks, Sarah. So the only other thing I'll ask you is maybe to answer a question that I think we might get from the students is, how do you balance your time, right? So you're an athlete, There's academics, the pace at WPI in terms of the 7-week terms. Can you talk a little bit about kind of balancing academics, athletics, or if you're doing music, other outside activities, and kind of how you handle that time management aspect?
Yeah. So I think a really good piece of advice that I actually got from someone in my freshman year was to treat it like a 9-to-5 job. So like during the day, you are focused on school. That is the time you have to get your work done. And at 4 o'clock is when it's time for practice. So that is when school kind of goes out the window. You don't think about it. You have a bit of a mental break. And then you can have like some leisure time later in the evening. But if you treat it like a 9-to-5 job, it helps maintain focus, but also avoid burnout, which can sometimes happen just because of how fast-paced WPI terms are. Like as soon as the first week of class is done, you're looking ahead to the exam that's coming up in another week. So just like separating time to be really focused and take a break is a really good strategy.
Great, thanks, Sarah. So I think we've got about 10 minutes or so, Patrick, so I'm happy to answer any questions, Sarah or I. Obviously, you could ask things about what's the food like on campus, any questions that you might have about the major, outside the major, academics, non-academic things, clubs. Obviously we have, again, I mentioned humanities and arts, we have music, theater, all types of things. So again, feel free to type a question into the Q&A or the chat. I'm not sure if the chat is working. It may just be in the Q&A, but if you want to just go ahead and reach out and ask questions if you have them. If not, obviously we'll stick around for a little bit to see if you have questions, but always feel free to reach out to me. You can identify my info on the websites as well. So I'll stop talking there.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much. And I can't echo that enough. Please take this time to put any questions you have in the question and answer box. This is a phenomenal time for you as prospective students to ask questions directly to a professor and a student while they're here too. So please utilize this time and ask any questions that you might have. In the meantime, in the chat, while I'm waiting for questions to come in, I'm going to drop a link so that way you can access some different types of events that are happening on campus and navigate our visit page. While I was actually putting that in, we just got a great question about, do we have piano and sculpture on campus for students to take advantage of? I would love for one of you to answer that question.
Yeah, Sarah, I don't know if you know, we do have, there is actually, I think you can take piano in the music department. There are, I know there are pianos on campus. Sculpture, I'm not as clear on. I don't know if Sarah, if you know anything about that.
I don't know anything about sculpture, but I know there is a lot of access to pianos. My roommate frequently goes up to campus, and you can reserve times. And there's also like free open times where you can just go to Alden Hall and play piano.
Yeah, great. Yeah, we do have different types. We have like 3D molding. We do have glass. We have different types of introduction to ceramics too. So we do have those opportunities for students to take advantage of that.
Awesome. Thank you, Patrick. Katie, Katie is asking, how is WPI this year as COVID is still here? Are classes in person or many classes virtual? So within the biology department, and this was true last year, even in the spring. So our labs, our undergraduate teaching labs, the courses that we taught in terms of the labs were all in person. And we manage that because in a biology lab, you are required to wear PPE, personal protection equipment. So you had goggles, you had gloves, you have a lab coat anyways, even in the non-COVID times. And so the only difference was masks, which were mandatory across campus anyways. And so literally for those students who chose to be on campus last year and this year, we are operating fully in person. Within our department, many of the courses are being recorded for virtual access, but I teach genetics right now and all 55 of my students are in person. Masks, again, are mandatory in class, both for the professor and for the students. We have microphones, that's not a problem. We use the board. We use, again, a recording system called Echo Capture, and those are all posted to the course as well. So within our department, we're pretty comfortable with respect to, again, things like infectious diseases and using personal protection equipment. So our students are pretty comfortable with it. Faculty are pretty comfortable with it. So it hasn't been a major shift for us in our department. I'd say, obviously, we're one of the departments that has been able to handle this more effectively. But right now, most of the courses are running in person, both lecture and lab. Should I jump right to the next question?
Yeah, absolutely. Jump right into it.
So internships or co-ops. Co-ops are typically the way often people think about them is you're taking a semester or a term off in doing that. I'd say they're not as prevalent in biology, partly because students are often trying to get in early into a faculty member's research lab. And so whether you're a freshman who started to work in a research lab of a faculty member on campus or a sophomore, you're often looking to get into someone's lab to really prep for your MQP. We encourage that in the department. A lot of our faculty are, again, taking students on by sophomore or junior year. A lot of our students have already engaged within faculty labs and research. And so there's not as much push for co-ops, but we have had students do co-ops. Certainly internships over the summer. A lot of students will do internships with various companies throughout Massachusetts. Massachusetts is pretty fortunate in the sense that we have a government-funded, state-funded group called the Mass Life Science Center. So this was started over 10 years, about 14, 15 years ago now by Patrick Duvall, the governor, and they put $1 billion in over 10 years. That now has continued on. And that money was going to life science companies, to private companies across the state to do lots of different things, including run internship programs. And so this internship program through the Mass Life Science Center, you can apply to this internship program at any point throughout the year. Companies can look to match particular students, and then you work with that company, and your pay is partly funded through the state and through that company. And so there's, again, initiative for companies to be part of that internship program that is state run. WPI, I don't have this past year's numbers, but up until this past year, pretty much every year, WPI placed more students in that program than any other institution across Massachusetts. And obviously there are some pretty competitive institutions that we have in Massachusetts, but I think one of the leg up that our students have is, again, this practical aspect of you get into labs, be it our teaching labs, which are authentic research, or faculty research labs. Because we are not serving 500 students, we can actually, again, get that high touch. As Sarah mentioned, she's spent time both over the summer and as a junior in my lab. Sarah, I don't know if you wanted to touch on any of those as well.
Yeah, after my sophomore year, I worked at a small company in Woburn, which is near Boston, called Covaris, at an internship. And that was a good experience. I was working with isolating RNA from dried blood spots, but definitely you get a lot of hands-on practice in the labs at WPI, and sometimes getting into a research lab at WPI can be better than an internship just in the way the research process works. Like there was one lab I took as a class, I think Duff mentioned it, molecular biology and so genetic engineering, where the entire lab, the course followed the direction of a faculty member, Scarlett Shell, and her research on tuberculosis. So we were essentially working in concert with her lab on that. So you get plenty of experience working in the labs at WPI, but definitely internships are an option.
Awesome.
Great,
Thanks
thanks.
so much. And sadly, I believe we have hit our time limit for the event today. So
Patrick, is it okay if I just jump and answer this one last quick question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome, thank you. So Katie, the research opportunities during the year are accessible, and it really just depends on you reaching out to particular faculty members and connecting with them. The amount of activity that you would like to do during the year could vary tremendously as to you spend a little bit of time, an hour, 2 hours, a couple hours a week over one term, or it could be across the whole year. It really is up to both the student and the faculty member as to what kind of amount of engagement that would be. But there's no set kind of approach to all of that. And obviously it's just a matter of you reaching out to the different faculty members to make that connection. But I would say it's highly accessible. It's just a matter of, again, connecting with the right faculty member.
Awesome. Thank you so
Patrick.
much. I can't echo that enough too. Definitely reach out to faculty members. They're here to help you. They're here to be a resource to you on campus. And with all that being said, I did drop that initial link in the chat to access what other visit events we have going on for these upcoming months, as well as the admissions email too. So if you have any questions at all, please feel free to reach out to us at any time. I just want to say once again, thank you all so much for taking time out of your day to stop by and learn a little bit more about biology and biotechnology and WPI as a whole. Please keep in touch and have a great rest of your day.